Now, news we are getting in this evening is that there is a group of medical students that they were studying, South African medical students studying in Cuba. They've arrived back in South Africa, but they've had really quite a harrowing couple of weeks. They were stranded in Cuba. The students say they didn't receive their stipulated stipend for 2 months. Now, this is the second group to arrive home. eNCA's Nqobile Madlala has more. She joins us now. Nqobile, this, I would imagine, is part of the cooperation agreement between South Africa and Cuba for medical students to study in Cuba. Am I right?
Yes, that's right, Sally. So they went about 5 years ago to go study medicine in Cuba, and just before they were to come back home, Sally, in fact, they only came back home once. This was about 3 years ago. So now 3 years later, they are now back in South Africa. But before they came here, they had an issue where they couldn't get their stipend for 2 months. Now, from what we know is that there was a breakdown of communications, and they were also not getting the money. They say that they were told that there seems to be a blockage with regards to their money. And in that 2 months, Sally, they will tell you that it was the most hardest time of their lives. In fact, yesterday when we had some of them that were speaking to us whilst they were still in Cuba, they were telling us that they had gone as far as even selling their belongings in order to make sure that they survive. Now, their families and their parents have been, of course, communicating to them. So you can just imagine the stress that both the students and the parents have been experiencing while in this 2 months they were not getting the money that they needed. Now, we do know that this money was supposed to go towards their foods, their clothes, anything that they really needed, Sally. But at that point...
Who was meant to pay the money? Was it meant to come from the South African government, from the Cuban government?
Okay, so this was supposed to come from the Department of Health in South Africa. Of course, through the Embassy of South Africa, then they were supposed to communicate with regards to what was going on. But there was a breakdown of communication, as they say that the person that is a representative in the embassy doesn't seem to be communicating very well with them. In fact, they were at a point where they were fighting now. So now they returned for the first time, Sally, in the 3 years, and this marks the end of the 5 years that they had spent in Cuba studying. A lot of mixed feelings, really, Sally. The parents celebrating that they finally have returned. But also, if you speak to some of the students, we heard that they were saying that as much as they are happy to be back in South Africa, they're very concerned about some of the students that they have left behind. Because of this communication issue, some of them has been paid some stipend, some of them have not been paid. So there still remains to be seen as to when they will receive the money that they needed from the Department of Health, of course. But Sally, the issue here is that if you speak to the Department of Health, you don't get anything. We've been calling them since Monday, and no information has been sent to us.
How big a group are we talking? How many students have been affected by this patchy payment of the stipend?
Well, what we know, Sally, is that this is the group that was supposed to be finishing their 5th year. So it's the last year that was, of course, affected by this stipend issue. Now, you will note, Sally, that the first group arrived with their plane, and the second group has arrived, and the third one is expected to arrive. We are hearing also that there are some of them that have tested positive for COVID, so they're not quite sure when the third group will be arriving. So we're talking a lot of numbers here, Sally. Of course, if you think the fact that it's all of them in one plane and they need to be brought back home. But from what we also heard, Sally, is that the other groups which are in different years in Cuba were also experiencing quite a similar issue. They're saying that some of them are being paid late their stipend, which is quite difficult, of course, for them, considering the fact that they're in that country and they need to survive.
Yeah, and they are there. They are guests of the Cuban government, part of the South African deal to educate South African medical students in Cuba. These students who've just returned, am I correct that they have finished their studies and they've just come back with a terrible tale, or have they returned because of this problem?
Well, they have returned because they have finished their studies, but now, Sally, it doesn't end just there. They still need to spend about 18 months in South Africa, where they're basically going to be they're going to be integrated back into our education system, where they are now going to then, after that, be qualified as doctors.
All right. Well, thank you very much for updating us on that. It does sound like it's a real problem, and particularly, as you say, that the Department of Health, who's meant to be paying out that stipend and sorting out any problem that those students would be encountering, have not got back to you. I look forward to seeing your full report on that. Thank you so much, eNCA reporter Nqobile Madlala.